I'm Laura, 32, female, and at my family's annual brunch, I finally pulled the plug on the bank of me. For years, I had played a role I never auditioned for, the silent, ever-reliable sponsor of a lifestyle my family felt they deserved, but had no intention of earning. It was a quiet, corrosive arrangement that had hollowed out our relationships, replacing love and respect with dependency and resentment. The brunch wasn't the beginning of the end. It was simply the moment the curtain finally fell, and the silence that followed was more profound than any applause I had ever received for my generosity. It all started so innocently. 5 years ago, my tech startup, a little app I'd built in my cramped apartment with more hope than funding, finally took off. The overnight success was dizzying, a whirlwind of venture capital, stock options, and a bank account balance that looked like a phone number. My first instinct, born from a lifetime of being the responsible older sister, was to share my good fortune. I wanted to lift my family up, to give them the security and comfort I'd never had growing up. My dad, David, had worked his whole life at a paper mill that was constantly threatening to downsize. My mom, Helen, juggled part-time jobs, always worried about making ends meet. And my sister, Chloe, 4 years my junior, was perpetually finding herself, a journey that always seemed to require a new, expensive hobby or a plane ticket to somewhere exotic. So I stepped in. First, it was paying off their credit card debt. Then, I set up an automatic monthly payment to assist with their mortgage, erasing that constant worry from my mother's face. For Chloe, I paid the rent on her trendy downtown loft, which she rebranded as her creative studio, and provided the capital for her to launch a career as a lifestyle influencer. The problem with a safety net is that people forget they're walking on a wire. My well-intentioned gifts slowly became expected entitlements. My role shifted from loving daughter and sister to financial institution, and with that shift came a subtle but chilling distance. I was the source of the funding, but I was rarely part of the fun. The first real sting came 2 years ago. For my parents' 30th wedding anniversary, I planned and paid for a lavish 2-week trip to Tuscany. I imagined us all there, sharing pasta under the Italian sun, a real family vacation to make up for all the ones we could never afford. A week before the booking was finalized, my mother called me, her voice syrupy with feigned regret. "Honey," she began, "your father and I were talking. This is so incredibly generous of you, but, well, we were thinking of it as more of a second honeymoon. You and Mark are so wonderful, but having you there would just change the dynamic." I was speechless. Mark, my fiancé, a man with more patience than a saint, just squeezed my hand while I listened. I tried to protest, to explain that I wanted to be there, but my mother was firm. "It's a romantic getaway, Laura, you understand." I didn't, but I relented. I paid for the flights, the 5-star hotel, the private tour. 2 weeks later, my Instagram feed was filled with pictures of them, not alone, but with Chloe. She had apparently been invited along to document the memories. They were all smiles, raising glasses of Prosecco in a sun-drenched villa I was paying for, thousands of miles away. I was the sponsor, not a guest. The caption on Chloe's post read, "Making the absolute best memories with the two people who gave me the world. Family first, Tuscany blessed." The hashtag felt like a slap in the face. Chloe's career as an influencer was a masterpiece of fiction, written and produced entirely by me. Her popular blog, Chloe's Chic Life, projected an image of a self-made style guru living an effortlessly glamorous life. The reality was that I funded the whole operation. The loft, the designer clothes she wore for brand shoots, the high-end camera, the laptop, even the subscription to the photo editing software, all of it flowed from my bank account. When she needed a small business loan to launch a line of overpriced scented candles, I transferred the money without a second thought, knowing I'd never see a dime of it back. When I once gently asked if she was starting to see any profit, she'd laughed. "Oh, Laura, you don't get it," she'd said, waving a dismissive hand. "It's about building a brand, not making money right away. It's an investment in my future." It was an investment, all right, but it was mine, not hers. The most painful slight, the one that truly cracked the foundation of my denial, happened last year. Mark and I had been diligently saving for a down payment on our first home. We were close, and the excitement was building. We spent evenings looking at listings, dreaming of a little yard and a room for a future nursery. Then came the frantic call from my parents. "Laura, we need your help," my dad said. His voice tight with a panic I now know was manufactured. "The bank is threatening us. We're behind on payments. We could lose the house." My heart plummeted. I didn't even question it. I transferred them a huge sum, nearly half of our house fund, without even telling Mark where it came from at first. I was just so ashamed. A week later, I went to visit them. I walked in to find the entire kitchen gutted. My mother, beaming, showed me the glossy brochures for a full remodel, complete with marble countertops and a chef-grade gas range. "Isn't it wonderful?" she'd chirped. "Chloe convinced us. She said a modern kitchen would add so much to the home's resale value. It's a smart investment." The lie was so audacious it stole my breath. I confronted them, my voice trembling. "You told me you were losing the house." My father's face hardened. "We were improving our asset. It's the same thing, really." Chloe, who was there, of course, scoffed. "God, Laura, why do you have to be so dramatic? You have more than enough money. Why can't you just be happy for them?" My mother just wrung her hands and said her classic line, "Let's not fight. Let's just all try to get along." That was the moment I understood. In their eyes, my money wasn't mine. It was a collective family resource that I was simply in charge of managing. My feelings, my dreams of buying a home with my fiancé, were irrelevant. Their wants, amplified by Chloe's entitled worldview, would always come first. I drove home in a daze, and when I finally confessed everything to Mark, the full, ugly truth of it all, he didn't get angry. He just held me while I cried and said the words that would become my mantra: "You deserve to be treated like a daughter, not a bank. We will get through this, and we will build our own future." It was then that the seed of a plan began to grow. Not a plan for revenge, but a plan for liberation. The annual family brunch was my mother's pride and joy. It was an event built on a fantasy of familial harmony, a carefully curated performance where everyone played their part. The house was always immaculate, smelling of roasted chicken and fresh linen. My father would play the jovial host, my mother would flutter about ensuring everyone's glass was full, and my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins who were all vaguely aware of the financial dynamics, would smile and pretend we were the perfect family from a department store commercial. This year felt different. As Mark and I walked up the driveway of the house I was still paying for, a cold resolve had settled in my stomach. The night before, I had sat at my laptop for hours, navigating the labyrinth of automatic payments, subscriptions, and transfers I had set up over the years. I created a new protocol, a kill switch, tied to a single, secure command on my phone. Mark sat beside me, not saying a word, just holding my hand. His quiet solidarity was the only approval I needed. "Are you sure about this?" he asked softly as I parked the car. I took a deep breath, the sterile, air-conditioned car air feeling like the last clean breath I'd take before plunging into the swamp of family obligation. "I'm sure that I can't do this anymore," I replied. "I'm sure that I deserve more than this." He nodded, his eyes full of a fierce, protective love that felt like a shield. "Okay, then I'm with you, all the way." Inside, the performance was already in full swing. My mother kissed my cheek, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Laura, darling, I was so worried you were running late." "We're right on time, Helen," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. My father clapped Mark on the shoulder. "Mark, my boy, good to see you. Can I get you a drink? I just opened a bottle of that 12-year-old scotch you like." The scotch I'd bought him for his last birthday. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. We mingled. I endured the usual round of thinly veiled questions about my company. My uncle asked for stock tips. My aunt complimented Chloe's new designer handbag, a birthday gift from me. Chloe herself was the star of the show, flitting from group to group, regaling everyone with tales of her latest collaboration with a brand, a story I knew was embellished to the point of fiction. She floated over to me, her smile a bright, predatory slash of red lipstick. Laura, so glad you could make it. I was just telling everyone about the amazing wellness retreat I'm planning in Bali. It's going to be transformative. That sounds expensive, I said, my tone neutral. She laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. Oh, it's an investment in my brand's authenticity, you get it. She winked, a gesture that was supposed to make us co-conspirators, but only made me feel like her accomplice in a fraud. We sat down to eat at the large dining table, set with the good china I knew was a line item on a credit card I'd paid off. The conversation was a meaningless buzz. My father talked abo. At his golf game, my mother fretted about the catering, and Chloe was live-streaming snippets of the table for her followers, narrating everything with breathless excitement. Under the table, my hand found Mark's. He gave it a firm squeeze. My thumb hovered over the screen of my phone in my lap. The app I'd designed was open, a single, ominous red button glowing on the screen. Execute final protocol. I felt a tremor of fear, the last gasp of the dutiful daughter I had been for so long. Was I really about to do this? To detonate a bomb in the middle of this fragile, fake peace? Then Chloe stood up. She picked up her champagne flute and tapped it with her fork. The gentle ting, ting, ting silenced the room. A self-satisfied smirk played on her lips. She had the spotlight, just as she always wanted. I'd like to make a little toast, she announced, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. She raised her glass, her eyes sweeping over the family before landing on me. This is a toast to family, to generosity, and to the one who makes all of this possible, she said. My mother beamed. My father nodded proudly. They thought she was finally showing some gratitude. But I saw the glint in her eye. I knew what was coming. To our sweet sponsor, Chloe declared, her voice ringing with mock sincerity. Our very own Laura, always paying, never invited. A few of my cousins chuckled uncomfortably. But my father let out a short, sharp laugh, and my mother gave a little, indulgent smile as if to say, "Oh, that Chloe." The words hung in the air, sharp and glittering and cruel. Always paying, never invited. She had distilled my entire existence in our family down to a single, humiliating transaction. In that moment, the years of quiet resentment, of being used and discarded, of funding their happiness while being excluded from it, all coalesced into a single point of cold, hard clarity. The fear vanished, replaced by an unnerving calm. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a resource. And resources can be depleted, or in my case, turned off. The chuckles in the room died down, leaving a thick, expectant silence in their wake. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for my reaction. They expected me to blush, to offer a tight, wounded smile, to absorb the humiliation as I always had. They expected the dutiful daughter, the good sport, the ever-flowing fountain of cash and forgiveness. They had no idea they were looking at a stranger. Mark's hand tightened on mine, a silent transfer of strength. I let go of his hand, my movements slow and deliberate. I didn't reach for a champagne flute. Instead, I picked up my lukewarm coffee cup. I raised it, not in a grand gesture, but with a quiet steadiness that felt more powerful than any theatrical display. My eyes met Chloe's. Her smug smile faltered slightly at my placid expression. "That's very thoughtful, Chloe," I said, my voice even and clear, cutting through the tension. "It actually reminds me to make a toast of my own." I paused, letting the room hang on the moment. I looked at my sister, then at my father, whose smile was now frozen on his face. "To the ones who just got a notification," I said, my voice dropping just a little, "that their mortgage assistance has disappeared." Confusion flickered across their faces. My words were so specific, so bizarre, that they didn't immediately register. It was just a strange, unfunny comeback. For a split second, there was nothing. Then came the sound. A single, sharp buzz from the table. It was Chloe's phone. Lying face up next to her plate, it lit up with a notification banner. Her eyes darted down to it. Her brow furrowed in annoyance, then tightened in confusion. I knew what it said. It was a customized alert from the rental payment service I used for her loft. Your scheduled payment for this month has been canceled by the primary account holder. Your rent is now past due. Before she could process it, another sound joined the first. Bzzz. This time, it was my father's phone, vibrating in his shirt pocket. He pulled it out, a frown creasing his forehead. He squinted at the screen. I knew his notification was an email from his bank's mortgage department. Alert. The automatic monthly third-party contribution to your mortgage account has been terminated, effective immediately. A wave of unease rippled through the room. The other family members exchanged nervous glances, sensing the shift in the atmosphere from awkward to alarming. My mother looked from my father's pale face to my own calm one, her hand fluttering to her throat. Laura, what's going on? Chloe looked up from her phone, her face a mask of disbelief. My rent, it says the payment was canceled. Laura, did you? I did, I confirmed simply. The mortgage, my father stammered, holding up his phone as if it were evidence of a crime. The assistance payment. It's been stopped. What is the meaning of this? This was it, the moment the P. Our performance ended and the real conversation began. I pushed my chair back and stood up. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my voice, when I spoke, was as solid as stone. The room went silent when I finally told them the whole, unvarnished truth. For the past 5 years, I began, my gaze sweeping over my parents and my sister, I have been your sole benefactor. Not just a helper, not just assisting. I have been the source. The money you live on, the lifestyle you enjoy, the assets you're improving, it all came from me. I let that sink in. The air was thick with their shock. I created something I called the Family and Friends Fund, I continued, my voice betraying no emotion. It was a separate investment account I managed. A portion of my company's profits went into it every month. That fund is what paid for Mom and Dad's mortgage assistance. It paid for Chloe's rent, her car, her credit card, her business. It paid for the golf club membership, Dad. It paid for the new kitchen. It paid for the vacation to Tuscany that I wasn't invited on. Each statement was a hammer blow, cracking the facade of their denial. Chloe was white as a sheet. My father's face was turning a dangerous shade of red. My mother looked like she was about to faint. Your toast, Chloe, I said, turning my full attention to her, was more accurate than you know. I have been your sponsor. But sponsorship is a business arrangement, and I am no longer investing in this venture. The returns are simply too poor. I held up my own phone, showing them the clean, simple interface of the app I'd created. 10 minutes ago, just before your toast, I pressed this button. It executed a final protocol. The Family and Friends Fund has been permanently liquidated. All automatic payments have been canceled. The car leases will default. The credit cards will be declined. The subscriptions will expire. I paused, saving the final, most devastating piece for last. The entire remaining balance of the fund, a very substantial sum, has been transferred. It is now the seed capital for a new, irrevocable trust. The name of that trust is the Laura and Mark Family Trust. Its sole beneficiaries are myself, my husband Mark, and any children we may have in the future. You have no access. You have no claim. It is final. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum, sucking all the air, all the sound, all the pretense out of the room. It was the silence of a world ending. It was the sound of the bank, finally being closed. The silence was a stretched-out, vibrating thing, like the moment after a lightning strike before the thunderclap. It lasted for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 seconds. In that time, I saw the full spectrum of shock and disbelief play across my family's faces. Then the thunder broke. It wasn't a clap but a shriek. You can't, Chloe screamed, leaping to her feet so abruptly that her chair scraped backwards and nearly toppled over. Her face was a twisted caricature of rage and panic. That's my money. I built my brand with that. You can't just take it away. It was never your money, Chloe, I said, my voice still unnervingly calm. It was mine. You just got to borrow the lifestyle it afforded. My father slammed his fist on the dining table, making the good china jump and clatter. "How dare you?" he bellowed, his face a mottled purple. He stood up, looming, his body tense with fury. "After everything we've done for you, we raised you, we clothed you, we fed you, this is how you repay us, by trying to ruin us, by throwing us out on the street." "I'm not throwing you on the street," I corrected him gently. "I'm just not paying for your house anymore. It's your house, Dad. It's your responsibility. It always was." My mother finally found her voice, but it was choked with tears. She began to sob, great gulping sounds that filled the room. "Laura, please," she wailed, her hands clasped in front of her as if in prayer. "Don't do this to us. Don't do this to the family. Think about what you're doing. We'll be ruined. Your father, his health." It was the classic guilt trip, the final weapon in her arsenal, but for the first time, it had no effect on me. The words just glanced off the new armor of my resolve. "The only thing I'm doing to this family, Mom," I said, my voice softening with a tinge of pity for her, "is giving it a chance to be a real one. A family based on love, not transactions." The other relatives at the table looked on, horrified and mesmerized. They shifted in their seats, desperate to be anywhere else, yet unable to look away from the implosion. Mark stood up beside me, a solid, calming presence. He didn't say a word to my family. He didn't need to. He simply placed a hand on the small of my back and looked at me. "I think we're done here," he said, his voice low and meant only for me, but it carried in the tense silence. I nodded, "Yes, we are." I looked Ed at my family one last time. My furious father, my hysterical sister, my weeping mother. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of grief for the family I wished we could have been, but it was overshadowed by an immense, surging wave of relief. Mark and I turned and walked away from the table. Every head followed our movement. No one tried to stop us. The accusations and sobs continued behind us, but they sounded distant, like noises from a television in another room. "You're selfish, Laura, you've always been selfish," Chloe screamed after me. "You'll regret this," my father roared. We didn't look back. We walked through the living room, past the family photos on the mantelpiece, images of a happy, smiling family that was a complete fiction. We walked to the front door, and Mark opened it. The moment I stepped outside, it was like stepping into a different world. The sun was warm on my skin, the air was fresh and clean, and the suffocating pressure I had lived with for 5 years lifted from my chest. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the first truly free breath I had taken in a very long time. As we walked down the driveway to our car, the shouting from the house faded into an indistinct roar. I felt a profound sense of sadness, but also a feeling of quiet, triumphant liberation. The chains had been broken. I was no longer their sponsor, their safety net, their bank. I was just Laura. And for the first time, that felt like more than enough. Mark opened the car door for me, and I slid into the passenger seat. He got in beside me and just sat there for a moment, the engine off. He reached over and took my hand, his thumb stroking my knuckles. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I looked at our joined hands, then out the window at the house where my former life was currently burning to the ground. A single tear traced a path down my cheek, but it wasn't a tear of sorrow. It was a tear of release. "I think," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "I'm going to be." He brought my hand to his lips and kissed it. "Good," he said, "because our life starts now." He started the car, and we drove away, leaving the wreckage of the annual family brunch behind us in the rearview mirror. The first 24 hours were an exercise in digital warfare. My phone, which had been my weapon, was turned against me. It became a conduit for a relentless siege of anger, manipulation, and despair. I had expected them to be angry, but I had underestimated the sheer velocity of their panic. It began with Chloe. A barrage of texts, dozens of them, one after another, each more frantic than the last. "You can't be serious." "Laura, answer your phone." "My landlord just called me. You have to fix this now." "I'm going to be homeless because of you." You are a monster, a selfish, evil monster. I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Then came the voicemails, her voice escalating from tearful pleading to shrill, incoherent rage. I listened to the first one, then deleted the rest unheard. My father's approach was different. He tried to wield his parental authority, an authority he had long ago abdicated. His texts were curt, demanding, "Call me immediately." "This is not a negotiation, Laura. You will reverse this. You have put your mother and me in an untenable position. I am deeply disappointed in you." His voicemails were filled with a booming, theatrical anger, lectures about duty, respect, and the ingratitude of children. He spoke as if I were a rebellious teenager who had broken curfew, not a grown woman who had just reclaimed her own life. My mother's messages were the hardest to ignore. They were a torrent of emotional blackmail, each word carefully chosen to pierce my armor of resolve. "Laura, my sweet girl, I don't know what we did to make you so angry, but please, please stop this. Your father's heart can't take this stress. He didn't sleep at all last night. Are you trying to kill him? You are tearing this family apart. Is that what you want, to be all alone? I love you, honey. Please come home and we can fix this. I know you don't mean it." Mark watched me as I scrolled through the endless notifications, my face pale. Without a word, he gently took the phone from my hands. "Give me that," he said softly. "You don't need to see this." He spent the next hour methodically blocking their numbers. He silenced the group chats. He changed my voicemail greeting to his own voice, calmly stating that I was taking a break from communications and that all messages would be screened. He built a digital fortress around me, and inside it, for the first time, I felt safe. The next phase of the assault came from the periphery. The flying monkeys, as Mark called them. My mother, unable to reach me directly, had deputized her sister, my Aunt Carol. "Laura," she said when I, foolishly, answered a number I didn't recognize. "It's your Aunt Carol. Your mother is beside herself. I have never seen her so distraught." "I'm sorry to hear that, Aunt Carr." "All," I said, my voice tired. "Are you?" she shot back, her tone sharp. "Because it sounds like this is exactly what you wanted, to punish them. Your father had to cancel his doctor's appointment because his card was declined. His heart doctor, Laura, is that the kind of person you are now?" The lie was so blatant, so manipulative, that it jolted me. My father's heart was fine. His heart doctor was a routine checkup he complained about for weeks. They weren't just angry, they were rewriting reality to paint me as a villain. "Thank you for your concern, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice cold. "But my relationship with my parents is between us. I have to go now." I hung up before she could respond and blocked her number too. Chloe, meanwhile, took her campaign public. She posted a series of vague, dramatic Instagram stories. A black and white selfie with a single tear on her cheek captioned, "Betrayal from those you trust most cuts the deepest." A post about the importance of cutting out toxic people, a breathtakingly ironic twist. Her followers, knowing nothing of the real story, flooded her with messages of sympathy and support, which she gratefully reposted. She was curating the narrative of her own victimhood, another brand she was building on a foundation of lies. Through it all, Mark was my rock. He cooked for me when I had no appetite. He drew me a bath when I was too tense to sleep. He made me go for long walks in the park, forcing me to breathe fresh air and feel the sun on my face. He reminded me that my feelings were valid, that my decision was an act of self-preservation, not malice. "They're not angry because you hurt them," he said one evening as we sat on our small balcony, watching the sunset. "They're angry because you've taken away their supply. This is withdrawal, Laura. It's going to be ugly for a while, but it's not your ugliness to carry." Slowly, his words began to sink in. The guilt that had been gnawing at me began to recede, replaced by a growing sense of peace. The constant hum of anxiety that had been the background music of my life for years was fading. In its place was a quiet stillness. The silence on my phone was no longer threatening, it was tranquil. It was the sound of my own life, waiting for me to finally begin living it. 3 weeks passed in a strange, quiet limbo. The digital onslaught had slowed to a trickle and then stopped altogether after Mark started answering the unknown numbers with a polite but firm, "Laura isn't available, and we will consider any further contact to be harassment." The silence felt both liberating and eerie. It was the calm in the eye of the hurricane, and I kept waiting for the other wall of the storm to hit. It arrived not as a thunderclap but as a quiet email. It was from a new address I didn't recognize, with the subject line, "From your father." My finger hovered over the delete button, my conditioning screaming at me to avoid the inevitable pain. But curiosity, and a sliver of something that might have been hope, won out. I opened it. The message was short, devoid of the usual bluster and demands. "Laura, your mother and I need to speak with you. This is not a request for money. We only want to talk, please. David." The please was what struck me. In all my life, I couldn't remember my father ever saying that word to me. It was a word that implied a lack of power, an admission of need. It was a white flag. I showed the email to Mark. He read it, his expression unreadable. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to ignore it, part of me needs to see." "Then we'll see," he said, leaving no room for argument. "Together, on your terms." My terms were simple. A neutral location, a public coffee shop downtown. Mark had to be there, and the conversation would end the moment money was mentioned as a request. I sent a reply, and my father agreed immediately. We arrived a few minutes early and chose a small table in a corner. When my parents walked in, I almost didn't recognize them. The 3 weeks since the brunch had aged them 3 years. My father's confident, blustering posture was gone, replaced by a stoop in his shoulders. He looked smaller. My mother's face was pale and drawn, the usual socialite sparkle in her eyes completely extinguished. They looked tired. They looked humbled. They sat down, and for a long moment no one spoke. My mother fussed with her napkin, avoiding my gaze. My father just stared at his hands on the table. Finally, he cleared his throat and looked up, his eyes meeting mine. The anger was gone. In its place was a deep, weary shame. "We were wrong, Laura," he said, his voice raspy. The words seemed to cost him a great deal. "We didn't realize, or maybe we didn't want to realize, we just got used to it. The money, it was just there. We took it for granted. We took you for granted." My mother started to cry, silent tears this time. "I'm so sorry." "My love," she whispered, her voice cracking. "My job was to be your mother, to protect you, and I let you down. I was a coward. I was so afraid of a fight, so desperate to keep the peace that I let us treat you so terribly. I sacrificed your feelings for Chloe's every single time, and that wasn't fair." This was it, the apology I had craved for years. It wasn't perfect, it didn't erase the hurt, but it was real. For the first time, they were seeing their own behavior clearly, without the filter of entitlement. "What about Chloe?" I asked quietly. My father sighed, a long, rattling sound. "Chloe is Chloe. She had to move back home. The landlord for her loft was not understanding. She refuses to speak to us. She blames us as much as she blames you. She's had a very rude awakening." He said the last part with a hint of grim satisfaction that surprised me. "She's looking for a job, a real one." They didn't ask for money. They didn't ask me to undo what I had done. Instead, my father slid a folder across the table. It was filled with bank statements, bills, and mortgage documents. "We don't know what to do," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "We've been living in a dream for 5 years. We're talking to a real estate agent about downsizing, selling the house. We need help understanding it all. Not your money," he added quickly, seeing the flicker of caution in my eyes. "Just your guidance, if you're willing." I looked at Mark. He gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. He was leaving the decision entirely to me. I looked at my parents, these two people who had caused me so much pain, but who were, in the end, just my parents. Flawed, broken, and finally, devastatingly, human. The anger that had fueled me for so long had burned itself out, leaving behind a clear, quiet space. I can't manage your finances for you, I said, establishing the new boundary clearly. But I will pay for one session, for the two of you, with a professional financial advisor. A good one. He can help you make a plan. My mother gasped, her eyes filling with a fresh wave of grateful tears. My father just nodded slowly, his gaze locked on mine. Thank you, Laura, he said. That's more than we deserve. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a beginning. It was the first, tentative step onto the new, solid ground of a relationship built not on dependency, but on honesty and respect. It was a hand up, not a handout. And as we left the coffee shop, I felt a sense of closure that was more profound than the liberation I'd felt walking out of the brunch. The war was over. Now, the slow, difficult work of rebuilding could begin. 8 months passed. The seasons changed, and with them, the entire landscape of my life. The new normal was quieter, simpler, and infinitely more peaceful than the old one. My relationship with my parents was tentative, like a young plant taking root in new soil. We spoke once a week on Sundays. The conversations were sometimes stilted, filled with the ghosts of things left unsaid, but they were honest. They had sold the big house. The closing was a difficult day for them, the final shedding of a life they couldn't sustain. They moved into a small, sensible condo in a retirement community an hour away. The first time I visited, my mother showed me around with a kind of quiet pride I hadn't seen in her before. She was excited about her new garden plot and the book club she had joined. My father, stripped of his golf club memberships and expensive hobbies, had rediscovered his old passion for woodworking. His new garage was filled with the scent of sawdust and the satisfying hum of his tools. They were living within their means, and in doing so, they seemed to have found a measure of peace they never had when they were living on mine. They were becoming themselves again. I had not spoken to Chloe. According to my mother, she was working as a receptionist at a dental office and taking online classes in accounting. The Chloe's Chic Life blog and social media accounts had gone dark. My mother said she was angry, resentful, and still struggling, but she was, for the first time in her adult life, standing on her own 2 feet. Maybe one day we would talk, maybe not. I was at peace with the uncertainty. Her journey was her own now, and I was no longer responsible for funding it or fixing it. My own life, once so entwined with theirs, was finally completely my own. Mark and I were in the thick of planning our wedding, a small, intimate affair that was about celebrating our love, not about putting on a show. We had bought a house, a charming little place with a yard big enough for a dog and a bright, sunny room that would one day be a nursery. Our down payment was smaller than it would have been, but it was ours, earned and saved by the two of us together. Every corner of that house felt sacred because of it. One evening, Mark and I were sitting on our new porch, watching the fireflies begin to dot the twilight. He was looking at me, a soft, happy smile on his face. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. "I'm thinking about that brunch," he said. "I was so proud of you that day, and so scared for you, but look at us now." I followed his gaze to the quiet street, to the warm lights of our own home. I thought about the rage and the tears, the slamming doors and the buzzing phones. It felt like a scene from someone else's life. The decision I had made that day was not an act of revenge. I saw that clearly now. It was an act of love. It was a brutal, painful, necessary act of love for myself, giving me the freedom to live authentically. But it was also an act of love for them, giving them the chance to find their own way, to build their own lives, to become a real family again. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do for the people you love is to stop enabling them. You have to let them fall so they can learn how to stand up. Setting a boundary can feel like building a wall, but sometimes, it's the only way to create a space where something real and healthy can finally begin to grow. It's the hardest lesson I've ever had to learn, but it's the one that set me free. For anyone out there feeling trapped in a role you never chose, for anyone whose generosity is being treated as an obligation, know this: you have the right to close the bank. You have the right to put your own well-being first. Your value is not determined by what you can provide to others. It is inherent. It is yours. and protecting it is the most important investment you will ever make. After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories. We are all human. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon.